Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're digging into the really volatile relationship between the United States and Iran. We're going to ask how two nations went from being pretty close allies to standing right on the brink of war. So let's get into it. So, we're actually going to start not in the past, but in a possible near future. Now, this is a fictional scenario, but it's one based on some serious analysis that shows just how high the stakes have really gotten. So just imagine, it's February 2026, and decades of all this tension just finally boil over. It kicks off with a joint U.S.-Israeli military campaign, codenamed Operation Epic Fury. It's a decapitation strike. They take out Iran's supreme leader. The response? It's immediate, and it's absolutely furious. Iranian missiles and drones rain down on U.S. bases and allies all across the Gulf. And then they go for the economic jugular. Iran shuts down the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, that's a choke point for a huge chunk of the world's oil. And just like that, the global economy grinds to a screeching halt. What's so wild about this whole scene is that this kind of open warfare is the end of a story that actually started with a close partnership. So how on earth did it all go so wrong? Well, to figure that out, we've got to rewind the clock. Okay, so you can trace pretty much the entire foundation of the modern US-Iran conflict back to one single pivotal year, 1979. It's the fracture point. It's the year everything changed. You see, before 1979, under the Shah, Iran and the US were key strategic partners. This was the Cold War, right? They had a common enemy, the Soviet Union. The US saw the Shah as this pillar of stability in the Middle East. But then came the Islamic Revolution. And it didn't just change the government, it flipped the entire relationship completely on its head. The US went from being a partner to being called the Great Satan, and a whole new era of hostility kicked off. And this timeline just shows you how fast it all happened. I mean, in January, the US-backed Shah is out. By February, Ayatollah Khamenei is back, setting up the Islamic Republic. And then, in November, you get the event that would poison relations for generations. Iranian students storm the US embassy. This kicked off the 444-day hostage crisis. And this wasn't just some diplomatic incident. It became a deep, deep ideological wound. So, for the next 40-plus years, the two countries, they managed to avoid a direct head-to-head war. But that definitely doesn't mean there was peace. Nope. Instead, the whole conflict just moved into the shadows. And the main way they fought was through proxy wars. Iran started building up what it calls its axis of resistance, basically a network of allied militias all across the region. Think of groups like Hezbollah in Lebanon or the Houthis in Yemen. These groups let Iran project its power and hit its enemies, like the US and Israel, without ever having to fight them directly.
And the shadow war had some major flare-ups. You had Iran helping create Hezbollah, which is now one of the most powerful militias in the world. Then the US and Israel reportedly launched the Stuxnet virus, a crazy first-of-its-kind cyber attack that hammered Iran's nuclear program. For a brief moment, diplomacy worked with the 2015 nuclear deal, but then the U.S. pulled out. And of course, in 2020, the U.S. assassinated General Qasem Soleimani, one of Iran's most powerful figures, which brought the two countries right to the edge of all-out war.
So that's the big question, right? How does this 4-decade-long shadow war finally explode into the open? What's the final push that leads to that direct fight we imagined back in our 2026 scenario? Well, according to the analysts, it's basically a perfect storm of three things. First, one last attempt at diplomacy over the nuclear program just completely collapses. Second, massive protests erupt inside Iran, shaking the regime to its core. And third, with Iran facing a crisis at home and its nuclear program speeding ahead, the US and Israel make a call. The threat can't be contained anymore. It's time for a preemptive strike. And the fallout from that decision, it's not just regional. Oh no. It is immediate, and it is global. The price of this war is something everybody pays. Just look at this number, $3.7 billion. According to an estimate from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, that's the cost of just the first 100 hours of Operation Epic Fury. We're talking almost $900 million a day. The economic shockwave hits instantly. With the Strait of Hormuz slammed shut, crude oil prices jump 10%. European gas prices, they surge a staggering 45%. And back in the US, the Dow Jones just plummets over 1,000 points. See, this isn't a regional war. It's a full-blown global economic crisis. And then beyond the money, there's the human cost, which is just immense. Within days, you're looking at over 1,200 people killed in Iran alone. Tens of thousands of American civilians need to be evacuated. And just look at the chaos at sea. More than 35,000 sailors and cruise passengers are completely stranded, while Iran's retaliatory strikes are hitting at least 6 of its neighbors. And this brings us to a really crucial point. A strike that takes out a whole leadership structure, yeah, it might feel like a decisive win. But as analyst John Alterman points out here, history shows us that these decapitation strikes almost never solve the real problem. In fact, a lot of the time, they just create a huge power vacuum that makes everything even more unstable. And so that leaves us with the ultimate question hanging over this entire scenario. Does a strike like Operation Epic Fury actually end the threat from Iran? Or, by taking out the leaders, do you just unleash something new, something unknown, and maybe, just maybe, something far more dangerous?